2, question number 1 was an equation. So this was the equation, and question number 2 asked you to solve it, but justify the steps. Okay, so 1 says to solve, 2 says to justify. So for number 1, I just used the distributive property first and got negative 24 plus 15n equals negative 38 plus 8n. Now, I added 24 to both sides, so that's called the addition property of equality. Okay, so you are allowed to abbreviate POE for property of equality. Okay, so then I brought down the 15n, and then I wanted to get my n's all to one side, so then I subtracted n from both sides, so I did the subtraction property of equality. Okay, wrote down what I had left, then I divided both sides by 7, so I did the division property of equality. And then when I actually divide and got negative 2, that's called substitution. Now, you could have followed a different order. Okay, you could have moved things a different way. So this is just one way to show the steps to get negative 2. But everyone should still end up with the answer of negative 2. Okay, you could have gone a different route if you didn't start with the plus 24. Okay. All right, let's move on down to question number 3. So question 3 and 4 was the same, where you had to solve the equation and then justify your steps. So I'm just going to do it all up here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is distribute. So that's going to give me negative 14a. And you got to be very careful here. A negative times a negative is going to give you a plus 6. Okay, it's less than 14 minus 6a. Now, from there, it's up to you if you want to move the 14 over, or if you want to move the 6 over, or if you want to start with your constants. It doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm going to move the 14a to the other side. So I'm going to put up here, the first step I did was the distributive property. What was the second step when I'm adding 14 to both sides? Yes. All right, so this is the addition property of inequality, right? Because these are inequality symbols. And you will have one of each. You will have an equation where you have to justify like we did in 1 and 2. And you're going to have an inequality where you're going to have to justify the steps. So these are gone. I'm going to bring down the 6 is less than 14 plus. And what is what is 14 minus 6? 8. Okay, so then I'm going to subtract 14 from both sides. So now I just did the subtraction property of inequality. Okay, so that's going to give me a negative 8 is less than 8a. What's my next step? Because this is supposed to be a review. So what is my next step? Yes. Divide both sides by 8. So what property is that? Division property of inequality. Okay, and then I'm going to end up with negative 1 is less than a. So that's called what? Substitution. Now, again, I want my variable written first, so that means I'm going to flip the sign, and then I'm going to put it in set builder notation. Okay, you don't really need to write anything for that. All right, any questions so far? So question number 5, so you find your question number 5 on your paper. Okay, and the correct answer for this was no solution. Did anybody have no solution for this? All right, so let's work it out. So I'm going to bring down the 3 plus 6x. I'm going to distribute the 2, so that's going to be 2 plus 10x minus 4x. And this will also help you guys do your test correction. So I'm hoping that you guys are paying attention. So over here, I'm going to need to combine some x's together. So I'm going to combine these together. So how many x's do I have when I combine those together? All right, so 6x plus 2. You can also write it 2 plus 6x, it doesn't matter. So now when I try to get all my variables to one side, you're going to notice, and some of you kind of made this mistake on your quiz, you didn't know what to write when you ended up with two numbers that did not equal to each other. Okay, that means it's no solution. Okay, if the two numbers equal one another at the end, then that means you have all reals. So that's the difference, because you might see one of those types on your test, either a no solution type of equation or an all reals type of situation. All right, let's do number 6. The answer to number 6 should be all reals. Did anybody get all reals for number 6? All right, so let's test this out. So this is going to give me negative 4b plus 24 plus 1 equals 25 minus 4b. Do you see anything on the left I can combine together? Yes. All right, so I can combine this right here, 24, the constants. What is 24 plus 1? 25. And if you haven't noticed yet, they already are the same on both sides, because one says negative 4b plus 25, the other one says 25 minus negative 4b. But let's say you didn't notice that and you went on and got rid of the b's. Okay, you're going to see they're going to cancel out on each side, and you end up with 25 equals to 25, which is a true statement. So that will be all reals. Okay. All right, let's move on to number 7. So these are considered proportions, right? So when we do proportions, we cross multiply to solve. So we're going to cross, it doesn't matter which way you cross first. I'll cross this way first and get 7 times n plus 8 equals, cross the other way, 3 times n plus 6. Who can tell me what they got as an answer for this one? This one came out to be a fraction, and it should be a negative fraction. Should be negative, yes. All right, negative 19 over 2 was the final answer. So let's see how you work this out. And again, this is a good review for your quiz corrections as well as your test. So we're going to distribute a 7. So that's 7n plus 56 equals 3n plus 18. Okay, then we're going to get all our n's to one side, or you can do constants first. Okay, it doesn't matter. So I end up with 4n plus 56, so I'm going to subtract 56. Okay, so when I subtract 56, what does that equal to? It was 18 minus 56. This is your review. How much? Negative 38. Okay. And then when I divide by 4, you want to reduce that to negative 19 over 2. Okay. And you can just, they're even numbers, divide both by 2, or you can have your calculator reduce it for you. All right. All right. Who has the answer to number 8? Number 8 was a fraction as well. Okay. Yes. That is correct. 65 over 7. Now, did anybody actually work this one out by getting a common denominator? All right, great. So you can do that to get rid of the fractions, and that's what I'm going to do. So who can tell me what the common denominator is? What's the common denominator of 7 and 5? 35. Okay. So I'm going to multiply this first fraction by what? I want to make my denominator 35, so what would I multiply the first fraction by? 5, okay. Who can tell me what 5 times negative 27 is? Negative 135. What do I multiply the second fraction by? 7. Okay, so I'll put it up here. So that's negative 21m. And what do I multiply the third fraction by? 5. And that's going to give me what? What's 12 times 5? 60. So you end up with a much nicer equation once you get a common denominator. You will have a fraction equation on the test. Like I said, the problems are very similar to what you're seeing here. Okay. All right. What do I do next? Who can help me out? Because this is a review, guys. This is not like we've seen this for the first time. So what should I do next? Okay. Yes. All right. So we're going to subtract 60. So what is that going to give me on the left? Okay. All right, who can tell me what to do next? What's next? Yes. Okay, divide by the negative 21. And what was our final answer on this when we reduced this? 65 over 7. And remember, guys, your calculator can reduce for you. So you can actually put in 195 over 21 because it's positive now because of negative divided by negative. And then once you hit enter, hit your math key, enter twice, it'll reduce it to 65 over 7 for you. Okay. All right, so let's look at question number 9. Okay, so we're solving for x. So remember I told you when you see fractions, you want to get rid of fractions. So you're going to multiply both sides by x. Okay. A good review for that quiz as well. All right, so we're going to have xu, or ux, it doesn't matter, equals to ky. And if I am solving for x, and x is being multiplied by the u, then I'm going to divide both sides by u. So x equals ky divided by u. So that's what you should have for that question there. All right, number 10. Solving for x again. So when you have this plus and minus stuff, you got to move that to the other side. So I'm going to add y over. So I'm going to have u plus y equals to x k. And then I'm going to divide by k. So that gives me x equals u plus y divided by k. So get rid of that minus y by adding it to the other side and then dividing by the k since you're trying to isolate x. Okay. All right, let's move on. All right, question number 11. We are solving for a. So again, I have a fraction down here. So if this is being divided by 4a, I want to multiply both sides by 4a. This one was a little tricky, so you might want to write this one down. Okay. So that will eliminate that right there, and I'm going to have negative 3 equals 4a times negative d plus r. Okay, or you could have left the 4a on the other side. I like to put it at the beginning. All right. Now, my goal is to try to get this a by itself, but first, this 4a is being multiplied by all of this. So what's the opposite of multiplication? So I'm going to divide by the negative d plus r. Okay. Now, if I divide by this negative here, it's going to change some signs. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that to a positive 3. Okay. And then I'm going to also change this to, so that would make that a positive d because I'm dividing by that. And then when I divide by this, it's going to change that to a minus. Okay. Now, 4 is being multiplied by a. So what's the opposite of multiplication? Division again. So this is like being multiplied by 1/4. Same thing. Because I'm dividing by 4. Same thing as 1/4. So what's going to happen here, you're going to have 1 times 3 at the top, which is still 3. And then you'll have this 4 times d minus r at the bottom. Now, if you wanted to, the other option is to distribute and have 4d minus 4r. You don't have to. Okay, so I would accept either one of these answers right here. Okay, you can distribute the 4 or not. Okay, that one was a little tricky. I probably won't have one like that one on the test, but it's a good problem to know how to do. Okay. Alrighty, let's go to number 12. So number 12, I am solving for x. Who can tell me what to do first? You should know now. Yes. Very good. Times it by 3x. Okay. So I'm going to have 3xu on the left equals to negative 5y on the right. I'm trying to solve for x, so I'm going to divide by which two terms? 3u. So x equals negative 5y divided by 3u. You just divide by what you're trying to get rid of. Okay. All right, so for 19 and 20, this is a compound inequality. So you have an or statement, and this is an and statement. It's and because we don't see the word or. All right, so let's go ahead and work both of these out. I'm going to move this down here. So the first thing I'm going to do is move all my n's to one side and all my constants to one side. Doesn't matter which way you start. So let's say I do this. You could have moved the other one. It doesn't matter. Okay, subtract 1. What is that going to give me? That's going to give me negative 11. Is that right? Is that right? Let me make sure. I need to take a look. All right, so it should not have been a negative 10. All right, so that'll make this a positive 9. So when we divide by 9, that's going to give us what? 1, which I'm going to now write this way. Okay. Then I'm going to do the other one. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract this over. So that's going to give me negative 8 is greater than 3n minus 5. Add 5. What is that? Negative what? 3. And so that's going to give me negative 1, which now I'm going to write the other way. All right, so here's my or statement. So n is greater than 1 or n is less than negative 1. And I want to put this in set builder. So I'll write it like that. Okay, that's my whole answer in set builder notation. N such that n is greater than 1 or n is less than negative 1. So for your graph, they should be going in opposite directions. So we should have an open circle on 1 going this way and on negative 1 going this way. Okay, is that right? All right. All right, last one, which is the and statement, and you'll have one of each just like this on the test. So that's why I said these are excellent questions for the test. And then tonight's homework, you're going to go ahead and go to the Blackboard and do those additional problems on Blackboard that you see, all right? All right, so I'm going to erase this so I can do the and statement. All right, so this is the last one. All right, now for and statement, I'm just going to rewrite this down here. Can anybody tell me what to do first? Because you have to know where to start. What should I do first? Yes. All right, we're going to add 9 here, here, and here. Okay, you got to add 9 to all sides. So this is going to give me 4 plus 4x is less than 3x, which is less than what? 4x plus 14. Now, this is where I probably would go ahead and separate it into 2 parts, because I think it can get a little confusing. So I'm going to do that. If you don't want to, you don't have to. So when I separate into parts, I'm going to have 4 plus 4x is less than 3x, and then 3x is less than 4x plus 14. So basically, you take the middle and it goes to both sides, okay? Because sometimes it can get a little confusing if you leave it all together. So this is what I'm going to do. 4 is less than negative x. I'm going to divide by the negative 1. So when I divide it by a negative, what should I do? Flip the symbol. Okay, so this is going to give me negative 4 is greater than x. And then over here, I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, I'm going to divide by a negative. So I'm going to flip the symbol. Okay, and then I'm going to have x is greater than negative 14. Is that right? Let me make sure. Okay, we flipped, and let's see. So when I write this in set builder notation, which number do I write first? The negative 14 is less than x, which is less than negative 4. And then you put your bar, put your x, and put the set brackets. Okay. So when you do your graph should be between negative 14 and negative 4. Open circles on both. And shade it in between.